Rachel didn't know what woke her up that night. Maybe it was the silence, too complete, too unnatural. She sat up, squinting in the dark. The digital clock blinked 3:11 a.m. She glanced beside her. Mark was still asleep, breathing steadily. But something felt wrong. There was a weight in her chest, a heaviness she couldn't name. She tiptoed out of bed, barefoot on the hardwood floor, every step carefully measured so as not to disturb anything, though she couldn't explain why. As she passed by Emma's room, she paused. Usually, by this time of night, she would hear the soft whir of the white noise. Machine, or Emma's occasional murmurs through the baby monitor. But tonight, nothing. Rachel's hand went to the doorknob. She turned it slowly and peered inside. The room was dark, lit only by the soft green glow of the nightlight in the corner. Emma was curled in a tight ball on the edge of the crib, far from the center where her stuffed animals usually lay. Her tiny body trembled even in sleep. Rachel's heart clenched. She stepped closer and noticed the baby monitor light was blinking red. The motion sensor had picked something up. That's when she remembered Joshua. His room was down the hall, but lately Emma had refused to be near him, even during the day. She'd scream if he entered the room, slap away toys he touched, and run to Rachel with tears that didn't seem like normal toddler panic. They'd brushed it off as regression, normal jealousy from a baby sister. But this didn't feel like jealousy now. It felt like terror. Back in the master bedroom, Rachel picked up the tablet connected to the baby monitor. She hesitated for just a second before hitting rewind on the feed. The footage played in reverse. Emma shifting, whimpering, and then froze at 1:47 a.m. That's when it began. She hit play. There, clear as day, was Joshua, standing by the crib staring down at Emma. His expression was blank, unreadable, not like a curious brother or a mischievous child. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood. Rachel fast-forwarded. He remained there for 7 minutes. Then 10, then 20. No movement, no blinking, just watching. A chill shot through Rachel's spine as she watched the footage. His stillness wasn't just unsettling, it was unnatural. Children didn't behave like that. They moved constantly, they fidgeted, they made noise. But Joshua was like a statue, his face calm, his hands at his sides, eyes wide open and locked on Emma. The kind of expression that didn't belong to a 3-year-old boy, but to something older, something calculated. Rachel watched as Emma stirred, whimpered, and scooted to the farthest corner of the crib. She turned away, curled into herself like a frightened animal, while Joshua never took his eyes off her. He didn't react. He didn't comfort. He just watched. Mark stirred as Rachel sat frozen with the tablet in her hands, replaying the moment over and over. "What are you doing?" he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. Rachel didn't answer. She rewound the video again, this time zooming in. At minute 15, she noticed something else. Joshua's lips moved. Barely. A whisper, no sound caught by the monitor. But he was speaking. Emma's body jerked at that exact second. She didn't cry out loud, but her mouth opened in a silent scream. Rachel dropped the tablet. It hit the bed with a muffled thud. Her whole body tensed. Mark sat up, sensing the fear now pouring off her in waves. "You need to see this," Rachel whispered, voice tight with something between panic and disbelief. Mark leaned over, rubbing his eyes, and looked at the screen. At first, he didn't react. Then his brows furrowed. "What's he doing?" he asked. Rachel shook her head slowly. "I don't know," she said. "But that's not normal. That's not human." Mark stared at her, incredulous. "He's a kid, Rach. A weird kid, maybe, but—" She cut him off. "No! Watch it again. Look at his eyes." Mark obeyed. His face went pale. "Jesus," he whispered. "He's not blinking." The couple sat in silence as the footage played once more. 35 minutes. No blinking, no shifting. Joshua just stood there. Emma's fear wasn't unfounded. She wasn't being dramatic. She was reacting to something no one else wanted to see, something Rachel now wished she hadn't seen either. The questions flooded her mind. Why did Joshua do that? Was he sleepwalking? Was this a medical condition? But even as she searched for logical explanations, deep down, Rachel knew. This wasn't a behavior rooted in trauma or adjustment. This was something else, something that made her skin crawl and her maternal instincts scream to take Emma and run. Rachel didn't sleep the rest of the night. She sat at Emma's crib with her back against the wall, her daughter's tiny hand wrapped around her finger. Every creak in the hallway, every rustle of wind outside made her flinch. Joshua's door remained closed. In the morning, he greeted her with his usual quiet, "Good morning." But now that voice didn't sound sweet. It sounded rehearsed, studied, as if it knew what it was supposed to sound like. Rachel watched him carefully, noting the way his eyes tracked everything in the room before they settled on her. She forced a smile, her stomach tight. She didn't trust him. Later that day, Rachel tried showing the footage to the daycare manager, hoping for reassurance or explanation. The woman watched only a minute before stopping. "Maybe you should talk to someone," she said gently, returning the tablet. Rachel nodded, her mouth dry. That phrase, "talk to someone," kept echoing in her head. But what could she say? "My adopted son stands like a statue and watches my baby sleep without blinking." They'd think she was losing her mind, and maybe she was, or maybe not, because Emma still refused to be in the same room as Joshua, and Rachel couldn't deny the truth anymore. Something was deeply, terrifyingly wrong. Rachel always believed in intuition, but she'd never experienced it this way before, like a quiet alarm, buried deep in her bones, going off louder and louder each day. From the moment they brought Joshua home, something had felt off. Not wrong, necessarily, just off, like walking into a room and into a knowing someone had been there before you, even though everything looks untouched. In the early days, she had ignored it, writing it off as the adjustment period. After all, every adoption story came with its own set of challenges. But now, sitting across from Joshua at breakfast, while he methodically arranged his cereal by color and never once looked up, she couldn't deny that this wasn't just about bonding. Something deeper was happening, something she couldn't name. Mark, on the other hand, had fully embraced the transition. He was the one who found Joshua's file at the agency, the one who insisted he felt a connection the second he saw his picture. At the time, Rachel took it as a sign. After the miscarriage, they'd both been broken in their own ways. Adopting Joshua felt like a step toward healing. But Mark didn't see the things Rachel saw. He didn't notice the way Emma started flinching when Joshua entered the room, or how the baby's cries turned to silent sobs any time he sat beside her. He didn't see the coldness in Joshua's eyes when he thought no one was watching. Or maybe he did, and chose not to believe it. Rachel wasn't sure what was worse. The more Rachel tried to explain her concerns, the more isolated she felt. Mark told her she was tired, hormonal, overprotective. Friends suggested therapy, long baths, more sleep. The pediatrician offered the usual platitudes. Kids need time. Siblings struggle with new dynamics. You're doing everything right. But none of them saw what she saw. They didn't see how Joshua never asked questions like other toddlers, how he never laughed, not truly, how he always seemed to be listening, calculating. It wasn't that he didn't act like a normal child, it was that he acted like he was pretending to be one. Rachel started documenting things, a private journal hidden under the mattress, notes about behavior patterns, things he said, the way Emma responded to his presence. At first, she felt ridiculous, but after that night with the camera footage, she no longer cared how it looked. Her gut was screaming at her to pay attention, and deep down, she felt something horrifying. Not only was Joshua different, but he knew she knew. There was a shift in how he looked at her, not childlike, not afraid, almost amused, as if they were playing a game she hadn't realized she'd entered. She tried observing him from a distance, disguising her scrutiny behind routine. While folding laundry, she'd glance into the living room, watching as he sat perfectly still, staring at cartoons but never laughing. During meals, she'd ask him open-ended questions. His responses were always brief, correct, but hollow. No curiosity, no wonder. One afternoon, when she jokingly asked if he had any friends at daycare, he responded without looking up, "I don't need any more." The phrasing chilled her. More? Had he had them before? What did he mean by that? When she pressed him, he just blinked and asked for more juice. Emma, meanwhile, was deteriorating. Her naps turned into screaming fits. She clung to Rachel constantly. Her vocabulary, once impressive for her age, began to shrink. She spoke less, cried more, often resorting to pointing or grunting when Joshua was near. One day, while changing her diaper, Rachel noticed bruises on her legs, tiny, round ones like fingerprints. When she asked Emma what happened, the toddler simply whimpered and said, "He watches." Rachel's hands froze mid-motion. "Who watches, baby?" she asked. But Emma just buried her face into Rachel's shoulder, trembling. That night, Rachel confronted Mark again. She showed him the new bruises, repeated Emma's words. Mark frowned, concerned, but quickly rationalized. "She's probably falling in her crib," he said. "You know how she moves in her sleep." Rachel snapped, louder than she meant to. "Are you serious? You think that's normal?" Mark threw his hands up. "What do you want me to say, Rach? That our son is hurting our daughter? That he's some kind of, what? Monster?" The word lingered in the air. Neither of them spoke for a long time, because even if they didn't say it, both of them had thought it. Rachel couldn't sleep again that night. She lay awake, listening to every creak, every breath from the monitor, every possible sign that something wasn't right. At 2:46 a.m., she got up. This time she didn't check Emma's room. She walked to Joshua's instead, quietly, slowly. She opened the door just enough to peek. Inside, he wasn't in bed. Her heart stopped. The sheets were untouched. Panic surged in her throat, but before she could move, she saw him, sitting in the rocking chair by the window, wide awake, staring at her. Not startled, not surprised, just watching, like he'd been waiting for her to come. She didn't say a word, just closed the door and backed away, heart pounding. She stumbled into her bedroom, locked the door, and collapsed onto the floor, trying to breathe. The way he looked at her, it wasn't the gaze of a child. It was older, patient. Rachel wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly, as realization solidified like ice in her stomach. This wasn't her imagination. It wasn't hormones or trauma or stress. Something was wrong with Joshua, and if no one else was going to do anything about it, she would. She didn't go back to sleep. When dawn broke, she went into the garage and pulled down the box of old records from their adoption agency visits. There had to be something in the paperwork she missed. Some clue, a red flag, anything, because her gut was no longer whispering. It was screaming, and she was done pretending everything was fine. Whatever Joshua was, she had let it into her home, and it was time to find out what she had really brought through that door. There had been a time not long ago when everything in the Miller household felt normal, whole even. Rachel often thought back to those early mornings when sunlight filtered softly through the kitchen windows. Emma perched in her high chair, giggling at the cartoons humming from the tablet screen. Mark would sit across from her, scrolling through emails and sipping coffee, occasionally reaching over to kiss Rachel's hand as she stood at the stove. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The air had felt light, the kind of peace that settles into a family when life finds its rhythm again. After the miscarriage, it had taken months for that sense of balance to return, but by the start of spring, they'd found it, until Joshua came. Rachel still remembered the day Mark showed her the photo. They were sitting on the living room couch, adoption paperwork spread across the coffee table like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled. Mark had opened the agency email, and there it was. A picture of a little boy, arms crossed tightly over a stuffed elephant, eyes staring straight into the lens. Rachel had felt something then, but she couldn't tell if it was warmth or unease. There's About him, Mark had said. Rachel agreed, though she didn't say out loud what she was really thinking. There was something too focused in his gaze, too knowing. But grief has a way of twisting judgment. They both wanted healing, and Joshua seemed like a door to it. The adoption process had moved. Fast, too fast, in hindsight. Within a week, home inspections were complete, background checks cleared. Rachel remembered asking the agency about Joshua's past. No significant trauma, they said. No behavioral flags. Just a boy left behind, waiting for a home. Something in the way the coordinator avoided eye contact during that conversation should have raised alarms. But again, Rachel was tired, eager, and deeply hopeful. She wanted to believe in the goodness of the moment. She wanted to believe they could love again. And so, they signed the final papers. The first day Joshua arrived, Emma had been napping. Rachel carried him through the front door, his small hand gripping hers tightly. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply walked in, eyes scanning the space like he'd been there before. Mark took a picture. Joshua standing in the hallway, silhouetted by the afternoon sun. It was the first and last time Rachel remembered him looking small. That night, Rachel peeked in while he slept. He lay perfectly still, not sprawled or tangled like children normally sleep. His arms rested by his side, eyes closed, but there was no softness in his expression, just calm, calculated calm. Emma had reacted oddly from the beginning. She didn't run up to Joshua with toddler enthusiasm like she did with other children. Instead, she clung to Rachel's leg, eyes wide and silent. When he tried to offer her a toy later that evening, she screamed. Everyone laughed nervously. "She's just startled," Rachel had said. "Give her time." But over the next few days, Emma's behavior shifted completely. She cried during meals, refused to sit in her chair unless Rachel was beside her, and began pointing at Joshua and shaking her head whenever he came near. Still, Rachel chalked it up to adjustment. Children were sensitive. It was too early to panic. Looking back, Rachel could now identify the micro details that should have stood out. The way Joshua never touched the toys unless asked. How he sat motionless for long stretches, eyes trained on something no one else could see. He mimicked Emma's words sometimes, but not like a brother learning, more like someone recording and repeating, testing the rhythm of normal speech. Rachel had noticed one evening how he echoed Mark's laughter during a joke, just a half-second too late, and without a single change in his facial expression. She had laughed too, trying to convince herself it was all in her head. One afternoon, while cleaning Joshua's closet, Rachel found a tiny journal tucked beneath his folded shirts. She opened it, expecting scribbles or drawings, but the pages were covered in tiny, neat letters. Not block print, not messy. Letters formed with intent, words written in sentences too complex for a toddler. Phrases like observations complete, subject avoids prolonged contact, no signs of detection. Her heart pounded as she read. Then came a sound behind her, a whisper of footsteps. She looked up, and there was Joshua. In the doorway, head tilted, staring. She slammed the book shut. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. He blinked slowly. "I like to pretend," he said, and then turned and walked away. Rachel wanted to believe it was a game. Children pretend all the time, but nothing about Joshua's presence ever felt playful. There was always a weight in the room when he entered, a silence that pressed against the walls. Emma sensed it instantly. Rachel had watched her baby girl begin to withdraw, refusing to play, retreating into herself, eyes darting toward her brother with a fear no toddler should carry. It wasn't sibling rivalry, it wasn't confusion, it was primal, and Rachel was now starting to see it for what it was, a warning. Mark stayed optimistic during those early weeks, brushing off each concern with a logical explanation. "It's new for all of us," he said. "You're reading too much into it." But even his tone began to shift when Emma refused to be left alone. When Rachel woke one night to find Joshua standing silently in their doorway, eyes wide open, staring at them as they slept, Mark couldn't ignore it. He walked Joshua back to bed without a word, but he didn't come back. Right away, Rachel heard them talking, Mark asking something in a hushed, almost trembling voice, Joshua responding with a calm sentence that Rachel couldn't hear. When Mark finally returned to bed, he didn't say anything, and he didn't sleep. Rachel clung to those memories of before, like a drowning woman grabs a life preserver, because they proved something real had existed. There had been laughter, comfort, safety, and now there was only suspicion, fear, and a darkness growing thicker by the day. She missed the way Emma used to giggle at bath time, the way Mark used to hum while cooking dinner. Those things had vanished quietly, replaced by silence and eyes that watched too closely. The family they had tried to rebuild was slowly unraveling, and Rachel feared it had only just begun. The call came in just after 10 a.m., while Rachel was midway through answering emails at the kitchen table. The daycare's number flashed across her phone, and her stomach instantly tightened. Emma had been fussy that morning, refusing her breakfast, clinging to Rachel's neck like a lifeline during her drop-off. Rachel had chalked it up to a rough night, but now, as she answered and heard the strained voice of Ms. Carolyn, the director, on the other end, she knew this wasn't about Emma. "There's been an incident with Joshua," the woman began. "He bit another child." The pause that followed was heavy. "It's not just the bite. Could you come in? Please." The drive to the daycare was a blur. Rachel's hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles white, her thoughts spinning in every direction. Joshua hadn't shown any signs of aggression at home, not physically at least. His behaviors were subtle, calculated, chilling in a quiet way. But biting, that was primal, that was a sudden escalation. She replayed every interaction between Joshua and Emma in her head, wondering if she had missed something worse than bruises, something she hadn't dared to consider. When she arrived, the receptionist met her at the door with an apologetic smile and ushered her into Ms. Carolyn's office. The boy who had been bitten, Liam, was fine, physically. The bite hadn't broken skin, but it had left a deep red mark on his forearm. What disturbed the staff wasn't the bite, it was Joshua's behavior. After, he didn't cry. He didn't look scared or ashamed, Miss Carolyn said, her hands folded tensely on her desk. He just stared at Liam and smiled, not in a mischievous way, not like a kid who knows he's in trouble. He didn't say a word, just smiled. Then he sat down and started coloring like nothing happened. Rachel didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat had gone dry. That smile, she knew exactly what they were describing. As part of protocol, the daycare had reviewed the hallway security footage. They showed it to Rachel. The video showed Joshua walking calmly into the classroom, his eyes fixed directly on Liam, as if he'd been looking for him. He crossed the room slowly, stopped behind Liam's chair, and bit down on his arm without warning. No struggle, no build-up. The whole thing was silent and surreal. Then he let go, backed away, and sat at the art table. What caught Rachel's attention most wasn't the act. It was the look in Joshua's eyes right before the bite, focused, unblinking, like someone fulfilling an objective. Ms. Carolyn wasn't accusatory. She was concerned. "He doesn't behave like the other children," she said carefully. "And I don't just mean socially. He doesn't respond to praise. He doesn't react to group activities. He seems older than he is." Rachel wanted to scream, "He is!" but she just nodded instead. They agreed Joshua would be kept under closer observation, but Rachel could tell from the tone in the director's voice that a quiet warning had been issued. "Watch your son. Something's not right." As she left the building with Joshua beside her, holding her hand loosely, she glanced down at him. He looked up, expression neutral. "I didn't mean to hurt him," he said softly. Rachel flinched. She hadn't said a word to him about the incident. That night, Rachel sat in the living room, watching Emma play with blocks. Joshua sat across from her, holding a stuffed dinosaur, pretending to chew on its arm. Not aggressively, not even playfully, just repetitive, slow motions. Emma glanced up and froze. Her face turned pale. She backed away from her own toys and climbed onto the couch beside Rachel, without a word. Her tiny body pressed tightly against her mother's side. Rachel's heart broke. Emma hadn't spoken a word to Joshua in over a week. She didn't even call him by name anymore. She referred to him, when she dared, as the boy. Not brother, just the boy. Later, while Mark was in the shower, Rachel approached Joshua's room. She knocked once, then entered. He was sitting on the floor, lining up dominoes in perfect symmetry. "Joshua," she said carefully, "why did you bite Liam?" He didn't look up. "He touched my drawing." She waited. "And that made you mad?" Still no eye contact. "He shouldn't touch things that aren't his." The answer came out flat, emotionless. Rachel kneeled down. "But you know biting isn't okay, right?" Joshua blinked slowly, then turned to her. "I know." Then he added, "But sometimes they have to be reminded." Rachel's blood ran cold. "Reminded of what?" she asked. He didn't answer, just turned back to the dominoes. Mark was harder to reach that night. When Rachel brought up what the daycare director said, he brushed it off. "A lot of kids bite, Rach. You're overreacting." But even as he said it, he looked uncomfortable. "You know what scares me?" Rachel asked. "Not the bite, the smile, the way he looked afterward." Mark didn't respond. He stared at the TV for a while, then finally said, "He's just figuring things out. He's been through stuff we don't know about." Rachel leaned back in her chair, eyes on Joshua in the hallway mirror. "That's the problem," she whispered. "We don't know anything about him." That night, Rachel didn't check the monitor. She didn't need footage to confirm what she already felt in her bones. Joshua was different, not broken, not hurt, just different in just a way that didn't make sense. She lay awake with Emma tucked in beside her, thinking about the quiet smile, the slow, deliberate motions, the eerie calm that wrapped around him like armor. Joshua wasn't learning to be part of the family. He was studying it, learning how to mimic, how to pass. And sometimes he slipped, like a daycare, like with Emma. Each slip was small, but Rachel was starting to see the bigger picture. She couldn't explain it yet, couldn't bring herself to form the words, but her instincts were no longer whispering, they were screaming, and though everyone else still offered excuses, reassurances, and logical theories, Rachel knew the truth was circling them slowly. Joshua hadn't just come into their home. He had brought something with him, and it was only a matter of time before that something showed itself fully. The bite was the beginning. The smile was the warning. Rachel didn't know what she was expecting when she scheduled the appointment. Maybe validation, maybe answers, maybe in some part of her still clinging to hope, reassurance that what she saw wasn't real. She chose Dr. Ellen Hartford, a specialist in early childhood trauma and developmental disorders, with glowing recommendations and a calm, reassuring tone over the phone. Rachel didn't tell her everything, just enough to get her interested. "He's adopted. He doesn't act like other kids. He stares too long. He frightens my daughter." Ellen agreed to meet them in her office on a Tuesday. Morning. Rachel held Emma's hand tighter than usual on the drive there, her heart pounding the whole way. Joshua sat in the back, calm as ever, eyes locked on the road ahead. The office was painted in soothing tones, beige, light blue, touches of green. Toys were neatly arranged on shelves, and a mural of cartoon animals danced across one wall. Ellen greeted them with warmth, crouching to Joshua's level and introducing herself gently. He responded politely, a slight smile on his face. It was that smile that made Rachel flinch. It was the same smile he used with everyone, measured, practiced, cold behind the eyes. Emma clung to Rachel's leg, refusing to go near her brother. Ellen took note, nodding thoughtfully. "Let's begin with just Joshua," she suggested. Rachel hesitated, then stepped into the adjoining observation room where she and Emma could watch through a one-way mirror. First, the session seemed normal. Joshua responded to questions, built a tower with blocks, and described a recent day at daycare. But Ellen's demeanor shifted subtly after just 5 minutes. She leaned forward, asked more specific questions. What do you think when other children cry? What does it feel like when someone's hurt? Joshua answered each with eerie clarity, always the right words, but never the right emotions. When she asked what made him happy, he responded, making things quiet. Ellen paused. What kind of things? Joshua didn't blink. The ones that make noise when they're scared. The room went silent. Rachel's heart dropped. Ellen tried to shift the tone, redirecting Joshua with art supplies. Can you draw your family? She asked, handing him a blank sheet. Joshua nodded and began sketching. Rachel leaned closer to the glass, Emma resting uneasily in her lap. What he drew made her blood run cold. It wasn't a family, it was a house, burned black with figures standing outside. One was marked with an X. The smallest figure had red scribbled across the face. Joshua labeled them. Mom, Dad, me, her. Rachel's breath caught. Her. That's how he labeled Emma. Not Emma, not sister, just her. Ellen stared at the paper for a long time. Then Joshua said something. The room didn't have audio, but Rachel saw his lips move. Ellen's expression shifted instantly, from composed to pale, her body stiffening in her chair. She said something quickly, stood up, and walked out of the room without looking back. Rachel rushed into the hallway to intercept her. What happened? She asked, voice rising. Ellen didn't answer at first. She moved past Rachel, grabbed her purse from the front desk, and only then turned around. I'm sorry, she said, her voice flat. I won't be continuing sessions with your son. Rachel was stunned. What did he say? Ellen hesitated, then whispered, he told me what I dream about when I'm alone, things I've never said out loud, things only I would know. And with that, she left. Rachel stood frozen in the hallway, Emma clutched in her arms, her mind spinning. The receptionist asked if she was okay. She couldn't answer. How could she? What do you say when your child has just unnerved a professional trained to work with the most traumatized, violent, or unstable children? What do you do when that professional flees the room and refuses to return? She drove home in silence, glancing at Joshua in the rearview mirror. He sat quietly, looking out the window. No questions, no fidgeting, just silence. At one point, he met her gaze in the mirror and smiled. Not wide, just enough. Back at home, Rachel called Ellen 4 times. No response. On the 5th try, she left a message. Please, I need to know what he said. I need to understand what's happening. No reply came. Mark found her in the kitchen later that evening, staring at the sink, unmoving. How did it go? He asked. Rachel shook her head. She walked out. She won't talk to me. Mark frowned. She must have misunderstood something. You know how these experts are. They read too much into everything. Rachel turned to him, eyes hollow. No, Mark. She didn't misunderstand. She was afraid. That word hung between them. Afraid of a child, their child. That night, Emma refused to sleep in her room. She curled into Rachel's side, refusing to let go. Around midnight, Rachel heard soft humming from down the hall. A lullaby, one she didn't recognize. She slipped out of bed and walked toward Joshua's room. The door was cracked. He sat on the floor, back to the wall, staring at the ceiling, humming. Rachel's voice trembled. Where did you learn that song? Joshua didn't look at her. I didn't, he said calmly. I remembered it. Her skin prickled. From where? He turned his head slightly. From before. Rachel took a step back. Before what? He smiled again. Before I had this name. Rachel backed away, heart hammering, and locked the door behind her. She stood in the hallway, fists clenched, breathing hard. She didn't know what to do anymore. She couldn't call the agency. They'd say she was imagining things. She couldn't call a therapist. They were already gone. And Mark was slipping further into denial with each passing day. Rachel was alone. And the boy in the room down the hall was something she didn't understand. Something pretending to be her son. Whatever he said to Ellen had been real enough to send her running. That had to mean something, and that meant Rachel had to act. As dawn crept across the windows, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, reviewing old emails from the adoption agency. She started writing everything down, every incident, every word, every moment of fear. It wasn't about convincing anyone anymore. It was about surviving, about protecting Emma, about finding out what Joshua really was. Because whatever mask he was wearing, it was slipping, and soon it would be gone entirely. Rachel had never broken a law in her life. She paid bills on time, returned shopping carts, followed speed limits. But as she stood outside the adoption agency's main office that rainy Friday morning, heart pounding and hands shaking, all of that felt like another life. She wasn't here as a mother anymore. She was here as a woman desperate for the truth. After what happened with the therapist, and with Emma's condition worsening by the hour, Rachel knew she couldn't wait for permission. She needed to find out where Joshua really came from, and that meant finding the documents they didn't show her. The ones she now knew had been deliberately kept hidden. The building itself was quiet, almost too quiet. She had made up a story about updating their profile for a second adoption, a lie that had given her access past the front desk. The assistant left to retrieve a folder, giving Rachel the opening she needed. She moved quickly down the hallway, heart in her throat, until she reached the records room. The door was cracked. She pushed it open, slipped inside, and shut it silently behind her. Metal file cabinets lined the walls, each labeled by year and case number. She scanned quickly, until she found the one marked JM. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the drawer open. Joshua's file wasn't under his name. It was filed under a number, 81502. At first glance, it looked like a standard adoption file, birth certificate, social worker notes, health screenings. But tucked in the back was a second folder, stapled shut with a red sticker, restricted, federal hold. Rachel hesitated for a second, then ripped the staple out and opened it. What she saw made her knees buckle. It wasn't a medical file. It was a series of reports, each stamped with government seals, written in coded language and clinical terminology, surveillance logs, psychological profiles, and then photos, black and white, grainy, all of Joshua. But the timestamps didn't make sense. The earliest photo was dated 1997. Joshua looked exactly the same. Same face, same size, same blank expression. Another photo was dated 2003, then 2010, then 2016. No change, no signs of aging, no difference in facial structure. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The report attached to the earliest photo referred to subject 81502. Under status, it read, biological anomaly, apparent cognitive stability, high, observational retention, emotional detachment, sustained. She read faster, each line hitting like a hammer. Rehoming protocol activated. Prior hosts terminated. Current containment strategy. Familial insertion via controlled adoption. Rachel dropped the folder, her hands numb. Containment. Hosts. Terminated. What was this? She grabbed her phone and snapped as many photos of the documents as she could, knowing she couldn't take the originals. She shoved the folder back into the drawer and left the room with her heart pounding against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest. She didn't stop to speak to the assistant when she passed her in the hallway, just offered a tight smile and a mumbled thanks, then practically ran to the parking lot. Once inside her car, she locked the doors, checked the rearview mirror, and sat still. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. Joshua had been in this system for decades, and he hadn't changed, not once. At home, Rachel locked herself in the bedroom and began reading the documents again, this time taking notes. The reports were fragmented, filled with terminology that made her stomach twist. Subject displays mimicry behavior, consistent with adaptive AI, but exhibits no synthetic components. Another line, biological scans reveal inconclusive markers, no genetic aging indicators detected. One phrase repeated across multiple pages. Sustained psychological exposure yields subject-specific. Behavioral mirroring. She didn't know what it all meant scientifically, but emotionally, she understood one thing. Joshua wasn't just a child. He wasn't just adopted. He had been placed by someone for a reason. She found a timeline sketched crudely on the back of one page. It charted his reappearances under different names in different states, always under 5 years old, always adopted. The gaps between sightings varied. 3 years here, 5 there, once nearly a decade, but it was always the same face, always the same pattern: integration, observation, dissolution, then rehoming. Rachel felt her stomach turn. How many families had taken him in? How many had realized too late? What had happened to the others? Prior hosts. Were they alive? Were they missing? Were they terminated? Mark came home early and found Rachel sitting on the floor, surrounded by printouts, and her phone full of blurry photos. "What is all this?" he asked, stepping into the room slowly. Rachel didn't look up. She handed him the file. He read in silence for nearly 10 minutes. Then he whispered, "This can't be real." Rachel's eyes met his. "I watched him on camera for over 30 minutes. He didn't blink. He knew what the therapist dreamed about. He remembered a song from before. Tell me what part of this still feels like coincidence to you." Mark looked away, jaw clenched. "Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe this is someone else's file." "No, Mark," Rachel said quietly. "They didn't want us to see this. They buried it. We were chosen for this, for him. They didn't give us a son. They gave us a subject." Her voice cracked. "We brought something into our home that isn't what it pretends to be." Mark sat down slowly, visibly shaken. "What do we do?" Rachel didn't answer. She didn't know. All she could think about was Emma, small, innocent, and still sleeping just down the hall. If even half of what those files said was true, their daughter was in more danger than they had ever imagined. That night, Rachel didn't sleep. She lay beside Emma, watching the shadows move on. The ceiling, every creak of the house now sounding like a countdown. She didn't check on Joshua. She didn't dare. But somewhere around 3 a.m., she heard the floorboard creak outside her room. A soft knock followed. Not hard, just enough. She held her breath, didn't move. The doorknob turned, but the lock held. Then silence. 5 minutes, 10. Then soft footsteps retreating. Rachel let out a long, trembling breath. She wrapped her arms tighter around Emma. She had seen the truth. She had read the file. And now, whatever was pretending to be her son, knew she knew. Rachel didn't know how the man found her. She hadn't contacted anyone outside her immediate circle. She hadn't posted anything online or emailed anyone with the documents she'd photographed. And yet, the email came at exactly 3:06 a.m. An encrypted message from an address she didn't recognize, with a subject line that made her stomach drop. "We've met before. Subject 81502. The message itself was short. "I know what you found. You need to talk to me. You're not the first, but you could be the last. I can meet tomorrow, 5 p.m. Plainfield rest stop, southbound side. Come alone." There was no signature, just a redacted government emblem embedded in the body of the email. Rachel stared at the screen for nearly an hour before showing it to Mark. He said it was a trap. She said it didn't matter. The rest stop was an hour's drive from their house. Rachel left early, under the pretense of shopping for Emma's birthday. Mark didn't argue. He was still grappling with the file, the documents, and the fact that the boy sleeping in the next room wasn't a boy at all. The tension between them had grown, silent and thick, but they were finally aligned in one thing. They were afraid. The drive was grey, overcast. The highway seemed quieter than usual. Rachel gripped the steering wheel tight, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few miles, unsure if she was hoping to see someone following her or praying she wouldn't. The man was already there when she arrived, sitting on a bench. Under a metal awning near the vending machines, he looked like any retired government employee. Baseball cap, thick coat, large sunglasses, coffee in hand. He didn't stand when she approached. "You're the mother?" he asked, voice rough like gravel. Rachel nodded. "I read the files," she said. The man grunted. "Then you already know too much, but not nearly enough." He gestured for her to sit. She did, cautiously, eyes scanning the lot. "Who are you?" she asked. He took a sip of coffee, then answered, "Name's Harold Cooper, former CIA. I worked on containment anomalies for 20 years. Subject, 81502 was the last one I ever touched. Nearly cost me everything." Harold spoke with the cadence of a man who had rehearsed this story in his head for years. He told her about a facility in Nevada, hidden, illegal, privately funded but loosely connected to black-budget government projects. Subject, 81502 was found in 1996 in a foster home in Montana. A social worker flagged the case after noticing the child's birth records repeated identical physical metrics every year. Same height, same weight, same face. An internal investigation confirmed it. He didn't age at all. Harold said they ran every test imaginable. DNA, psychological assessments, neurological scans. Nothing added up. He was human, but not like any human we'd ever seen. His mind worked differently. He absorbed everything, patterns, language, behavior, like a recorder that edits itself to fit in. Rachel sat frozen as Harold continued. He told her the subject never showed fear, never asked questions, never demanded attention. He didn't need to. He watched. He learned. He adapted. That's how he survived. When she asked why they didn't just lock him away, Harold's face darkened. "We tried, but containment never lasted. He escaped facilities 3 times. Not violently, just vanished. No alarms, no footage, just gone. Eventually they decided the only option was to place him in families, monitor from a distance, and let the behavioral data accumulate. He chooses when to reset. When he's ready, he disappears and re-emerges under a new name, a new file, same face. We started calling them adoption cycles. You're probably his 10th. Rachel felt sick. "What about the others?" she asked. Harold shook his head. "Some vanished. Some broke down. One couple died in a fire. Another disappeared in a national park. The agency scrubbed it all. No one wanted a child-shaped liability tied to them, so the files were buried. I buried some myself, until I couldn't anymore." Rachel reached into her bag, pulled out a printed copy of one of the documents. "What does this mean?" she asked, pointing to a line that read psychological parasitism suspected. Harold sighed. "It means we think he doesn't just copy people. He uses them, learns from them, adapts emotionally, mentally, and when he's done, he lets go." Rachel's hands trembled as she tried to understand. "So he's dangerous." Harold looked at her, finally taking off his sunglasses. His eyes were tired, hollow. "He's not violent. He doesn't need to be. That's what makes him dangerous. You feel crazy. You start losing sleep, trust, reason, and all the while, he just watches and waits. And when he's ready to move on, something always happens." Rachel swallowed hard. "He's living in my house, with my daughter." Harold stood slowly. "Then you have to decide how much longer you're willing to let that continue." Before she could ask more, Harold handed her a small flash drive. "Everything I have. It's not official, none of this is. If anyone finds out I met with you, I disappear. You too." Rachel took it, stunned. "What do I do with him?" she asked. Harold paused, then said, "Watch him. Don't confront him, don't threaten. Just get ready. Because when he decides it's time to move on, you won't get a warning." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into a white pickup truck at the far end of the lot. Rachel sat there for a long time, the flash drive clenched in her hand, her entire body numb. The drive home felt surreal. The world outside hadn't changed, but Rachel had. Every tree, every billboard, every distant radio. Station sounded like static now, background noise in a life that no longer felt like hers. She thought about Emma, about Mark, about the version of herself from just a few weeks ago. The one who wanted to save a child, who thought love could fix anything. She was gone, and in her place stood someone who had seen something she wasn't supposed to see. As the house came into view, Rachel felt her chest tighten. Joshua would be inside, waiting, watching, and now she had to pretend she didn't know. Rachel didn't say a word when she got home, not right away. The meeting with Harold had left her drained, mentally, emotionally, even physically. Every sound in the house felt louder, sharper. Joshua was in the living room, lining up toy cars in a perfect row across the coffee table. He didn't look up when she walked past, just kept moving methodically, placing each car with the precision of someone who wasn't playing, but executing a pattern. Emma was asleep upstairs, thank God, and Mark was in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink, already on his second glass of bourbon. Rachel paused in the doorway watching him. He didn't notice her at first. When he finally looked up, his face registered something, concern maybe, but he didn't speak. Rachel held up the flash drive. "I met someone," she said. Mark set the glass down. "Who?" She stepped into the kitchen, her voice low and steady. "A former CIA agent. He worked on Joshua's case. Said our son isn't just different, he's not what we think he is. He's been through this before. Families, placements, cycles." Mark rubbed his face with both hands. "Jesus, Rachel." She took a deep breath. "He doesn't age, Mark. He's been alive for decades. He's watching us, learning us, using us." Mark shook his head. No, I'm not doing this. This has gone too far." Rachel didn't back down. She laid the flash drive on the counter, then pulled out the copies of the photos. Joshua's face, unchanged through the years, stamped with dates from decades ago. "Look at them," she said. "This is who he is." Mark barely glanced at them before turning away. "You're tired. You're spiraling. You've let this fear get into your head so deep. You're seeing monsters where there aren't any." His voice was rising. "He's a child, a traumatized child. We took him in. We promised—" Rachel cut him off. "We didn't promise to die for a lie." Mark slammed his hand on the counter, the sound echoing off the walls. "Enough! Do you hear yourself? You sound insane." Rachel stood still, staring at him. "Then why are you yelling?" she asked quietly. Mark didn't respond. He just turned away, pacing. Rachel pressed forward. "You knew something was wrong. You felt it too. You saw the footage. You saw how he looks at Emma, how she reacts. And still, you say nothing." Mark turned back to her, eyes narrowed. "Because I thought it would go away, that if we ignored it long enough, maybe it would fix itself." Rachel shook her head, tears welling. "It's not going to fix itself. He's not going to stop. He's waiting. That's what Harold said. He watches until he's ready to move on. And when he does, people disappear. Families burn. We could be next." Mark looked away again, but not before she saw it. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear in his eyes. "I picked him," he said softly, almost to himself. "I saw his photo at the agency. I was the one who pushed for it. Maybe I wanted to believe it too badly." Rachel stepped closer. "They didn't just let us adopt him, Mark. They let him choose us. He chose you." The weight of that statement settled like concrete between them. Mark looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" Rachel handed him one of the reports. "It says here, Subject 81502 selects environment with high emotional instability, reintegrates based on unprocessed trauma. That's us. That was us when we went in after the miscarriage. They knew it. He knew it. He picked us because we were vulnerable." Mark read the line over and over, his mouth slightly open, breath shallow. "So what now?" he asked. "We just live with him?" Rachel's face hardened. "No, we find out what he wants before he takes it." That night, Mark tried to talk to Joshua. He sat beside him on the couch, tried to ask about his day, about daycare, about what he wanted for dinner. Joshua answered each question with polite, perfect phrases. Then Mark asked something different. "Why did you pick us?" Joshua paused for just a second, just long enough. "Because you were sad," he said, "and sad people are easier." Mark froze. "Easier for what?" Joshua tilted his head, expression still neutral. "To learn. to stay with. Mark got up and walked out of the room, face pale. He didn't speak to Rachel for the rest of the night. Rachel spent hours reviewing the contents of the flash drive. More files, more cycles, all confirming what she feared. There were redacted reports from families across the country. One mother had written in a desperate note, "He doesn't sleep, he just waits." Another described a feeling of being watched so deeply it turned into physical illness. There were timelines of disappearances, emotional breakdowns, unexplained deaths, all tied to a boy with Joshua's face. It wasn't random. It was planned. Rachel sat in the dark, the glow of the laptop casting shadows on the walls, and realized something even worse. No one had ever stopped him, not once. As dawn approached, Rachel walked into Emma's room and stood by her crib. Her daughter stirred slightly, then reached for her mother in her sleep. Rachel bent down and kissed her forehead. The air felt heavier than ever, and behind her in the hallway, she heard the soft creak of a floorboard. She didn't turn around. She didn't have to. She knew it was him, just standing there, watching. And in that moment, Rachel understood. This wasn't about protecting her daughter anymore. It was about preparing for what came next. It started like any other night. Dinner was quiet. Emma refused to eat unless Rachel held her the entire time. Joshua pushed food around his plate without ever taking a bite. Mark sat in silence, eyes sunken, thoughts distant. The tension in the room wasn't new, but it had become unbearable. Rachel could feel it in her skin, in her breath, in the way her hands shook slightly every time Joshua looked up at her. He didn't say much, didn't do anything unusual, and that was the worst part. The silence had become his camouflage. That night, Rachel knew something was coming. She couldn't explain how, but every instinct in her body screamed that this night wouldn't end like the others. After dinner, Mark offered to bathe Emma while Rachel cleaned up. Joshua lingered by the living room doorway, staring at the wall. Rachel watched him from the corner of her eye. He wasn't watching TV. He wasn't playing. He was just standing, still, rigid, and unnervingly alert. She dried her hands, trying to decide whether to say something. Before she could, Joshua turned to her and said, "You know now." The words were quiet, almost casual. Rachel froze. "Know what?" she asked, her voice thin. He smiled, a slow, small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything," he replied. "You looked at the files." Rachel's heart dropped. Her hand instinctively reached for the drawer where she'd hidden the flash drive, but it was already gone. "Where is it?" she asked. Joshua didn't answer. He walked toward her, slowly, deliberately. "They all look eventually. That's how it starts." Rachel stepped back. "Where is it?" she repeated, her voice shaking. Joshua paused in the middle of the kitchen. "It doesn't matter now," he said. "She's ready." The words struck her like a hammer. "Who?" Rachel whispered. Joshua looked up the stairs. "Emma!" And then he ran. Rachel bolted after him, heart pounding, screaming Mark's name as she flew up the stairs. The hallway was dark. Emma's door was open. Rachel reached it first. The crib was empty. She turned, frantic, calling out again. Mark burst from the bathroom, soaking wet, towel around his waist, panic on his face. "Where is she?" Rachel shouted. They searched the rooms. Every drawer, closet, under the beds. Nothing. Mark checked the locks, all still engaged. No open windows, no sign of entry or exit. "He's not here either," Rachel said, breathless. Mark looked at her, eyes wild. He couldn't have taken her. There's no way out. But Rachel wasn't so sure. She remembered Harold's words. "When he's ready to move on, you won't get a warning." She ran to the basement door. It was cracked open. They had never let Emma down there. Rachel flicked the light switch. It didn't work. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and descended, every step heavy with dread. The basement was cold and musty, filled with storage bins and old furniture. She swept the beam across the room and then froze. In the far corner, Emma sat on the floor, clutching something. Rachel ran to her, collapsing in relief. Emma was safe, but what she held in her tiny hands made Rachel's blood run cold. It was a photograph, old, yellowed, from the adoption agency's files. It showed Joshua, only the name under the photo was different, but the face was the same. Emma held the photo tightly, eyes wide and vacant. Rachel scooped her up and held her close. "It's okay, baby. I've got you." But Emma didn't respond. She didn't blink. Rachel looked down at her face and saw the same stillness she'd seen in Joshua's, the same blank, disconnected stare. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She turned to the corner of the room. Joshua stood there, silent, calm. "She's quiet now," he said. "She saw me." Mark stormed into the basement, breath ragged, yelling Joshua's name. But he stopped when he saw Emma, motionless in Rachel's arms. "What happened?" he cried. Rachel couldn't speak. Joshua stepped forward, looking at Mark. "She understands now. She remembers." Mark took a step forward. "What are you talking about?" Joshua tilted his head. "I was her first, too. A long time ago." The words hung in the air like smoke. "She forgot. They always do. Until it's time." Rachel clutched Emma tighter. "Get out," she whispered. "Get out of this house." Joshua didn't move. "This isn't your house," he said. "It's mine. It always was." Mark lunged at him but stumbled. His foot caught on a toolbox and he crashed into the floor. Rachel screamed, shielding Emma as Joshua remained still, untouched. "Stop it," she cried. "You're not real. You're not a child." Joshua's eyes flicked to her. "I never said I was." He turned and walked up the stairs. Rachel chased him, but by the time she reached the top, he was gone. The front door was wide open. No sign of him outside, just darkness. Rachel slammed the door shut, locked it and sank to the floor, Emma still in her arms. The girl blinked once, then twice, and whispered, "He said he'll come back." The rest of the night was a blur. They called the police, but Rachel knew it was pointless. There was no break-in, no evidence, just an adopted child who vanished into the night. Again. Mark tried to explain, but the officer's eyes said it all. Another overwhelmed family. Another child who ran away. Rachel didn't argue. She just held Emma tighter because she knew the truth. Joshua hadn't left. He had finished what he came for, and Emma, whatever he'd done to her, would never be the same again. The days that followed felt like a dream Rachel couldn't wake up from. The police report was filed, search parties were organized, local news stations ran segments about a missing adopted boy. But Rachel didn't participate in the interviews. She didn't hang flyers. She didn't go to the search meetings because she already knew the truth. Joshua wasn't missing. He was gone, disappeared, just like he had from other families, other homes, other lives. And this time, he had taken something with him. Not Emma's body. She was still here, but something inside her, something quiet, something no one else seemed to notice. Emma didn't speak for 3 days, not a word, not even a whisper. She just stared at walls, held that old photograph tight to her chest, and blinked slowly like someone waking up from anesthesia. Rachel stayed by her side every hour, feeding her, bathing her, holding her, through the night. Mark tried to stay strong, but the weight of what they had lived through was too much. He started sleeping on the couch, then not sleeping at all. He drank more, said less. Eventually, he stopped looking Rachel in the eye. The house had never felt colder, not even during the miscarriage. Not even during the worst nights of grief. This was something different. This was survival without peace. Rachel burned the documents, all of them. She deleted the photos from her phone, smashed the flash drive with a hammer until it cracked apart, not out of fear that someone might find them, but because she knew they wouldn't matter. No one would believe her. No one ever had. The system was built to forget Joshua, to erase his trail and reset the story. She could keep the evidence, scream the truth into the void, or she could protect what little she had left. She chose Emma. Chose to erase the trail, chose to move forward, even if she would never truly leave it behind. They moved 2 states away, changed their last names, found a small house on the edge of a quiet town. No visitors, no questions, no neighbors. Rachel homeschooled Emma now, told people she was sensitive, recovering from a traumatic loss, which wasn't a lie. Emma smiled more, but only with Rachel. She still wouldn't speak to strangers, still wouldn't play with other children. At night, she sometimes sat by the window, staring out into the dark, whispering words Rachel couldn't hear. When Rachel asked what she was doing, Emma would only say, "He said he might come back, so I have to watch." Mark lasted 6 more months. He packed his bags one morning, kissed Emma on the head, and drove away without a word. Rachel didn't follow him, didn't call. She understood. Some people can't live beside the truth once they've seen it. Mark tried, but denial can only carry a person so far. Rachel wasn't angry. She was grateful in some strange way, because now she knew what she was fighting for, and she knew what was at stake. Emma was still here, and she still had a chance to grow up if Rachel stayed. Vigilant. Every room in the house had new locks, extra cameras, no mirrors. Rachel didn't allow pictures to be taken anymore, not even of Emma. She had learned too much, seen what came of documentation, what came of memory. There were nights she swore she saw him again, just a shadow near the woods. A flicker of movement, but when she looked again, nothing was there. She'd tuck Emma in tighter, check the windows twice, and sit by the door until morning. She didn't know if she was being paranoid or if she was already too late. She didn't care. As long as Emma slept, she would wait. Emma was 5. When she finally spoke again, it was morning. The sun was rising through the curtains, and Rachel was preparing breakfast. Emma walked in, barefoot, dragging her blanket behind her, and said, "Mummy, I remember the first time he held me. It was in another house. You weren't there." Rachel dropped. The spoon. Her breath caught in her chest. "What do you mean, baby?" Emma looked up, eyes clear. "He said I was special, that I help him remember things. That's why he picked me again." Rachel didn't respond. Couldn't. She just sank to the floor, Emma curling into her lap like she always did. And for a long time, neither of them moved. Rachel wrote a letter that week, not to anyone specific, just to whoever might need it someday. She didn't sign it. She didn't date it. She just wrote, "If a child ever arrives with no past and no questions, don't let him in. Don't believe the smile. Don't think. Don't. Love will fix it. He doesn't want love. He wants to learn." She placed the letter in a box under the floorboards, sealed it, and left it there like a seed, hoping it might grow into a warning someday, hoping someone else would read it before it was too late. Now, years later, Emma still sometimes pauses when she hears a knock at the door. Rachel does too, but they don't answer. Not anymore. They know better, because Joshua isn't gone. Not really. He's out there, somewhere, in another home, wearing another name. And one day, he'll come back. Maybe not for them, but for someone. Because he never stops watching, he never stops learning, and he always remembers he wasn't adopted, he was sent, and someone else just welcomed him in. Hey, this is Erlen from Tales of the Heart. If this story gave you chills, touched you, or left you thinking, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and leave a comment telling me what you think really happened. And please, send this to someone who would love or fear a story like this. See you in the next one.